There you go. Okay.
So I don't know how you want to do this.
Well, I will run it just as if I was running it. Sorry, it sounds like there's someone at my door. Give me just one quick second.
No worries.
Hey, I am back and ready to.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, I'll start sharing my screen because I have a few slides to give us a bit of context. So, okay, are you able to see my screen?
I can see your screen. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay. So, our agenda today is really very much focused on business strategy and planning. So we will talk about what the definition is of strategy and why it matters. We'll talk about what that then means in terms of being able to set long-term goals, and how we can then create a plan to achieve those goals. And how we track it, because once we've achieved the goals, it's very easy to get lost in the day-to-day stuff and, you know, not quite know where we are in terms of achieving them. And then we'll bring it all together by showing how all of that fits into documenting a business plan that we follow. And then there should be time for questions and answers. And given that it's a very special, unique audience, I think that it should, flow quite quickly. It shouldn't take us too long. But do stop me if you've got questions as I'm going through stuff. Actually, I'd prefer it very much if it's more of a conversation than me just telling stuff. So feel free to, just come in whenever you'd like to. Yeah, I know you know me, but for the purposes of the video, I'm Ola Molade, and my background is consulting and coaching. I've worked as a consultant in some of the big four, so Accenture and PwC, but I've also run my own consulting business where I was helping small to medium-sized businesses scale up, prepare their plans, raise funding. So I've seen businesses at either end of the scale. And a lot of what I'll talk about today is based on that experience. Um, I don't know if you want to say anything, Molly, in terms of introducing yourself.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. So my name is Molly Shubola. I am the founder and owner at Share Class Limited. Share Class is a wellness lifestyle brand where have sustainability as central to what we do in terms of producing natural skincare products that support people who have challenges around eczema, cirrhosis, challenging skin issues. Our products can be used from a baby in the woodland, which has shea butter, coconut oil, but doesn't have essential oil. So the other products is forest and uplift cream. This product, Forest, for example, has lavender and spearmint, which are unique essential oil blends that belongs to share class. So they're not something you can get on the street. They're very anti-inflammatory. They have calming effect on your skin. And we have the uplift, which has the combination of three essential oils that we use for people who have uneven skin tone. We also have oils and we have black soap and we have shea butter. We like to tell followers, our people that by buying share class, you're also supporting businesses on the African continent, which is really important to us because we know that if you empower a community, it's not just the business, it's the community that you're also empowering. Uh, Additionally, we also have a diagnostic medical accessible consultancy around the non-communicable diseases. It's called the MAC International, and we are partnering with organizations to bring healthcare to underserved communities in the UK to start off with, but also globally where those communities exist. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to the training session.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Great. Okay. So, well, we'll dive in. Like I said, it's about strategy, it's about planning. And I guess the first thing is really, what is strategy? Why does it matter? And if you look in the dictionary, it says that strategy is a plan of action that's or even policy designed to achieve a major overall aim. And that means that we have to understand what our major overall aim is. And sometimes I think what I observe is that some people go into business because uh, they don't want to work for somebody, so they feel like they would much rather be their own boss, or they feel like they need to be more flexible around timing, or they have something, they have a gem of an idea about, oh, this thing works for me, my family likes it. Why don't I sell it to lots more people? But not necessarily thinking about where they would like that business to end up. And having a strategy is really about thinking about where we want that business to end up down the line, so that all of the things that we do has that end in mind. It's a bit of a North Star as we go forwards. Okay. So I can throw a question to you, Molly, and feel free to say you're not ready to answer, but if I were to ask you the overall aim and that sort of end goal for your business, is that something that you'd like to share?
Yes, by all means. So for the share class and for DMAC, both of them is to address challenges around in the case of share class skincare issue that becomes profitable for us as a business and creates legacy of employment for both of those brands. And the reason why I talk about employment is that the statistics shows that global majority people are still underserved in terms of business acumen, in terms of opportunity for work. And therefore, if we have businesses that really focus as part of the strategy to bring people into employment, gainful employment, then that is part of the aims and objective of a profitable business.
It's as if you saw my next slide, so which is
Uh,
great. Okay. Because one of the key goals of business is that it's creating value for its stakeholders. So any strategy we have must be creating value for stakeholders. And you've very much talked about the value in terms of employees and creating employment, you know, here in the diaspora, basically for so that's a key stakeholder that you are interested in. This chart that I've got on the screen is something that's come from the Harvard Business School online page. And is the way they are defining value for a business is by looking at how we price based on the customer's willingness to pay, versus and the gap between what a customer wants to pay and what we price our product as is that customer delight gap. So, for instance, if I believe that Gucci is something that I really aspire to, and I, feel that it's something that is very valuable to me. If I found it at, what I consider to be a relatively cheap price, I'd be delighted because I'd say, wow, I've got this Gucci thing, and you know, it's it's serving a need in terms of me feeling good about myself, and I've only had to pay this amount for it. So there'd be that gap in terms of customer delight. So that has provided some value to me, in terms of that delight. The value to the company that provided that Gucci bag to me is the difference between what it had cost them in terms of the leather, the labor, the logistics, all of those things. It had cost them a certain amount to actually create that bag and make it accessible to me. And what they then decided to price it at. So, who knows, maybe it only cost them $50 to create the bag, and including labor and everything. But the price that they put on it was £5,000. But for me, I thought that, oh, I would have spent 10,000 on it. So I'm still delighted. They've made a good price. And therefore they've created value for their organization within that sort of value stick. And then, but even more than that, though, there's value for other stakeholders, for the employees, for the suppliers. And that is really the difference between what the suppliers or the employees, what their minimum amount would have been in terms of providing the leather or providing the service, what their minimum amount would have been versus what it is that me as the Gucci company is willing to pay. And my job there as the Gucci company is really around trying to find a way to make it attractive for my suppliers to want to work with me, so that it's easy, they feel like it doesn't cost them much. So, for instance, if the supplier was an employee, for instance, maybe if I said, actually, we will give you, I don't know, all sorts of perks and benefits. You can have the products at a certain discount. All of a sudden, working for Gucci for what might be a relatively low salary starts to seem very attractive. And therefore, I'm keeping my willingness to supply, willingness to sell costs quite down by, flexing other things that I have within my control. So this description is what is called the value stick, as described by Harvard. And this is really what needs to be at the back of our minds as we're thinking through the strategy of our business. It's flexing all of these things. We can't just think about the price that we'll sell it at. We can't just think about getting things at the cheapest cost. We need to have a full package. And those are the sorts of things that we're going to explore in the next few slides. So I've already actually talked through what we've got on these next 3 slides. So I will jump over to why we need to concern ourselves with strategy. And I've got a few slides on this. And I guess before I start reading what I've written on the on the slides, I'd like your thoughts, Molly, as to what comes to your mind when you think about strategy and how relevant you think it might be for you. I know there's a few answers on the screen,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
no, no, but
yeah.
so for me, strategy is a dynamic word in a business like share class or the mark. And the reason why I say that is because pre President Trump, we're in a different era. So the strategy that you probably have then does not actually work now. So strategy is about creating that vision, as you've put it, but that vision needs to adapt to the reality of the situation in which you are. So the strategy has to be agile, let me put it that way.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
you have to
absolutely right. Yes.
so you have to have an agile strategy because that's the reality of where we are. I mean, okay, maybe we might say President Trump is extreme. Even here in the UK,
Hmm.
pre-July 2024, your strategy is going to be different from the strategy with the Labour government that has a huge majority.
Hmm.
So effectively, we're in a time period where the government of the day can do anything and whatever it likes.
Yeah.
So that's why I say strategy, yes, the vision is the direction of travel, but it has to be agile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll come to a few tools that allows one to just assess what's going on in the environment that could affect the business. But you're quite right. We can't have a tunnel vision that I want to do it like this without understanding what else is going on around us, because that just cannot work. So yeah, absolutely. And over and above that, though, I think it's having a clear strategy helps us to articulate how we have advantage over our competitors, because it's really the strategy tells us how we are adding value, and it's how we're adding value in a different way to our other competitors that allows people to understand whether they want to work with us or they want to work with our competitors. So that is one clear use of having a strategy. Another clear use is when we are deciding where we are going to use what are usually very constrained resources, money, time, you know, that then, we need to know that we are spending what we've got in pursuit of where we want to end up. Otherwise, there's always interesting things that come up that look attractive, um, and can easily lead us, yeah, I wouldn't say astray, but certainly lead us down the garden path because it looks attractive and perhaps lots of other people are doing it. But is it really taking us where we intend to go? So it provides that clarity. And it just means that it means it's easier to make decisions. Somebody comes with an idea and I look at it and I look at where I'm going and I think, actually, no, that doesn't work. So I can take that decision very quickly and not worry about it.
Yeah, and to give you a practical example, last year I did our share class was in a lot of pop-up events that were not really profitable or even equitable for the brand. So, as a founder with the team, we decided that what we're going to do is to have a maximum budget in terms of the cost of the stand, and no matter how attractive the promotional value looks, we are not going to do that. And that's a good strategy to have. So that's a reflective strategy.
Exactly. You set your boundaries based on, where you want to be. Fantastic. Yeah.
So yeah.
Great. And a few more things in terms of why strategy might be relevant. Organizations with teams, especially with larger teams, need to know what it is they're there for. So because then that means that they have a common goal, a common purpose, and they can all work together. If they don't know what the strategy is, or do not agree with the strategy, that can be a recipe for people building little empires within the same organization, and them not working together, spending their time competing within the organization as opposed to competing with the real competitors outside. So having that knowledge, that clarity about where it is the organization is going and where everybody should be pulling to, certainly helps. And like you said, adaptability. If you know that you are going somewhere, but the market is changing, it just gives you a good framework to work with, in spite of the market changing around you. Of course, it helps with planning and forecasting because you will plan towards it, and your forecast will be aimed towards where you want to go. And also it means once you're clear about where you want to go, you can then assess whether or not you've got the capabilities, resources that you need, and you can then recognize any weaknesses or any gaps that you want to plug and start to work to plug those gaps. Okay. Um, Now, in terms of types of strategy, some people, have different ways of growing their organizations. And there's a few examples on the screen here. Some people focus very much on.
Can I
Oh,
ask,
please, yeah.
would we get access to the slides?
Yes, I will share the slides with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't need to write it all down. Yeah, yeah. Um, what was I going to say? Yes, types of strategy. Some organizations just feel more comfortable with different approaches. Some would focus on, cross-selling. So for instance, if I were a bank, um, in addition to the current account, I want you to use a savings account. I want you to buy insurance from me. I want you to buy lots of different things. I want to tie you in, and get a little bit of money in lots and lots of different places from the same customer, because I know who you are, and therefore I can contact you anytime, and I can offer you things. And depending on the sort of brand I've built with you and the relationship I've built with you, you probably trust me enough to think, oh, well, it's my bank, so I'll buy it from them. It's easier. And that is a great strategy for growing, for scaling a business. Other organizations focus very much on innovation. So for instance, Apple will say that, oh, ours is the most innovative type, or well, it probably was. I'm not sure it is anymore, but the most innovative of these products out there. So come to us, and you'll be at the cutting edge. And there's lots of people that like that, and want to be at the cutting edge, and therefore would go towards that brand. Um, Other organizations will add more and more products. So, I start with bricks, but then I start to sell timber, and then I start to sell roof slates. And, because I know that, the customers that come to me would be interested in those sorts of things. So it's very similar to cross-selling. Um, or it might be that, actually it's the same product. Maybe it's fridges, but I keep innovating on that product. So I bring out the basic model, I bring out the mid-range model, I bring out the really expensive model. Car companies do that all the time. if I go to Toyota, I can get something for under 20 and I can probably spend best part of 70K if I wanted to. And they all do that. So it's lots of different products to attract lots of different demographics of buyer. Or otherwise, I might just decide that I like a particular demographic. So I just want to be in the young market, and therefore I'll just build lots of products around that. Um, in other cases, it might just be around, differentiating my products so that people can really notice how I am head and shoulders above all of the other competitions out there. Um, a strategy for a lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses, might be around pricing. Um, but it goes both ways. Some decide that, oh, I will get traction in the market by being the cheapest
Hmm.
provider out there. And some go to the other side and say, well, actually, I will be very clear that I am not cheap. I am expensive, but this is why I'm expensive.
Yeah.
And those, either one says a lot to the customer about what they're getting and their expectations about what they're going to receive from the customer. If you are going on the low side, then you need to understand how you'll get suppliers that can supply you at that low side as well. Um,
Yes.
have more flexibility if you are at the upper end, because then it's really more around negotiating around the pricing. But either way, obviously, for the business to survive, there must be a profit margin uh,
Yeah.
to be called upon.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's some organizations where it's about technology. So they want to use technology to their advantage, and use that technology to mean that they are much quicker. So for instance, there's some specialist law firms out there that deal with collections for small businesses. And there's a few now that have automated everything, so they don't need that many people doing the work, but
That's
they're
correct.
charging the same as their competitors who are doing a lot of it manually. So, so they've used technology to their advantage to gain that edge and grow the value for themselves. Okay. Um,
Which is quite important, uh again, in the era that we're in, technology is becoming very central, and if you don't take advantage of technology, you're bound to be at the bottom of the pile.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, with AI and things like that, it just means that organizations can do so much more with a lot less. And if you are not doing that, then yeah, you will certainly be left behind. Yeah. Some organizations focus very much on customer retention. So, basically finding ways to ensure that the customer stays with them for life. Um, you know, and the good thing about that is that, once you are able to retain a customer, it's usually costs a lot less than trying to gain a new customer.
Yes.
So having, ways to keep them happy, to keep them coming back, whether it's for exactly the same product or perhaps additional products. So perhaps combining this with a bit of cross-selling and your product strategy means that you can keep them on board. And of course, the customer service that you're providing alongside that means you can keep them on board, and you can keep basically make more money out of those customers. And then, of course, there's going into new markets. So you might decide that actually, the market you're in is completely saturated. There's everybody has something, and it's not something that they want to buy every month or every year. So you branch out into new markets where it might be a new innovative product for them, and that might be a way to grow. Okay. So that's a little bit about why look at strategy, and also some of the approaches people take in terms of growing their organizations. Um, what I'd like to look at next is long-term goals and how we can work out what those might be, and also how to actually then ensure that we get to those long-term goals. But before I sort of dive into that, is there anything that you'd like to sort of just follow up on in terms of the different strategies?
I guess the thing about strategies is, like I said, it needs to be adaptable, or what I call agile, especially where we are and in the market that share class, for example, is operating, is very competitive. So it's about collaboration. And I don't know, I mean, you kind of said that, but not quite using the word collaboration. But I think collaboration is really key to getting making added value. So for share class, for example, we're going to be launching some events. I want to target corporate markets where we can put this into part of their well-being, that cross-selling that you mentioned. So that's really, and we're happy to be approached by organizations that want to actually do that, because that's part of the wellness and lifestyle brand that we talk about. So that's something that, if you know anybody who's interested in that, so it's not just going to be skincare. Melanin, which might have a lot of people who they already pivot to certain things, but actually we want to give them a new experience. So there could be mosaic art that we're doing with them. We could be putting the sustainability part of it into it. For example, the after you finish using your tea bag or your coffee, we could use that as part of the workshop that we're doing. So there's a lot that we can do. We can combine, collaborate, and we're already on that, like a weekend away for people who are willing to pay it. We'll put them in a great environment where they can do their well mindfulness, their wellness, their put. So these are the things that we're wanting to do, and I put it out there just in case you are aware of people who want to buy into that.
It would be good to talk about that more, actually. I don't want to go on a complete tangent,
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we
but,
can we
but,
can
but
do
definitely
that.
would like to talk about that more.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, fantastic. Great. Okay. Okay. So setting long-term goals. So it sounds like teaching someone to suck eggs.
Maybe there's a need to be taught.
Well, yeah, I think we just take some of this for granted a bit, and
Yeah.
and therefore don't necessarily acknowledge how taking this seriously can actually mean um, a difference to the organization. Um, but I'll sort of start by, the mechanics of it, So in order to work out what those long-term goals are, we have to be very, very clear about what the organization's vision and mission is. Um, and mission might be around, I think you've described yours a little bit about creating that employment, those employment opportunities, those partnership opportunities that you're looking to do, which is great as a mission. The vision is really about, okay, so how does that then look? If obviously you're here, share class, so I'll talk about share class for a minute. If share class is creating employment opportunities on the continent, in the diaspora, what does that really mean in terms of how share class will look as an organization? Will it be the employer of these people? Does it mean that it has relationships with suppliers who are doing the employing? Does it mean it has its own factories, or does it mean it outsources to other people's factories? So really being very, very clear about where you'd like to end up operationally, and it is that's what allows one to build realistic plans about getting there. So mission is a first step, but vision then gives one something to work towards. But you are going to say something.
No, I wondered if you wanted me to respond to that, or were
Yeah,
you just
come on.
saying,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. So at the moment, presently, where we are is that we're working with partners.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
I use the word partners in the sense that, for example, our branding is comes from there. We have somebody who does social media management. Um, sh- she's not directly employed by us, but because we pay them to do something, so they are partners in the journey. So that is where we are at the moment. As we grow, we would like, that would be our preferred option, to be able to also have a presence, whether we outsource the manufacturing to companies that already exist there, because if we use the best pestle model of making analysis on our strategy, it makes sense that somebody who already have an establishment, so long as we have the MOU and the confidentiality agreement in place for them to, they meet our standards of operation, it
Mhm.
makes sense to outsource to them because they already have the staff, they already have the facilities, and we're just using them, we're adding value to them in that respect.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Of
so
course, 10 years down the line, if
mm,
we're at a place where we now want to actually be physically present so that we can be in that amazing opportunity across the African continent, then that's part of our longer term strategy. So strategy is the short term, the medium term, and the long term.
um, can I reframe that a little bit and suggest that what you've defined there is some goals for long term and medium, but not necessarily the strategy. So you've talked about, maybe what 5 years down the line you will have partners, maybe 10 years down the line you'll have your own manufacturing facility, etc.
So how are we going to get there? Okay. So
No,
the
it's not
strategy,
a question yet.
yeah.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the strategy really right now is to build relationships with those partners who we already engage with, to be learning and investing. So you need funds to be able to get that strategy in place. So the strategy at the moment is learning to know what opportunities are there so we can develop that partnership. And it's when we build that partnership that we're able to get to those medium and longer term. So the strategy at the moment is to build the network that we already have, to build on that. To We already have at least 5 different organizations that we work with
Mhm.
on the African continent. So, and it's about leveraging that baseline in terms of what are the opportunities that we have, visibility of the brand on the continent. So those are the strategic way in which we're
Mm,
going to achieve that. So we're on many platforms
mm,
within the African sphere. So it's about, we're on the Melanin Rich group as
mm,
an example. So that's showing some visibility.
mm.
And when the opportunity allows us, would share our goal, our vision, our mission. Even across, like I said, where the as a brand where the global majority exists, whether it's in the States or
Mm.
so it's about that networking, and that's the strategy that we use to achieve what we want to achieve. Of course, all of that is on the foundation that we have the resources to do it.
Indeed, indeed. And that is part of, what one considers as part of this journey. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm going to run through a few examples, but they are just examples of long-term goals. But they might trigger some questions or things that you want to try. So feel free to jump in. Some sometimes the long-term goals are very much around what the business will look like financially. So what sort of turnover will it have? What sort of profitability will it have? How much will production cost? What will cash flow look like? Those tend to be, key goals that organizations set and work to achieve. In other organizations, or even the same organizations, other goals might be around growth and expansion. So, getting more share of the market, or increasing the number of customers you're working with, or new products, or new markets. Or sometimes it's about, getting more people in. Sometimes it's even about buying a competitor out so that you suddenly have all of their customers and all of their products. So that might be a goal. Another way of looking at the goals might be around the operations. So, making sure that the customer experience is fantastic. So because then obviously that will support retention of customers, it reduces your customer acquisition costs. Or it might be that you need lots of people in the business, so you are very keen on making sure that you're able to attract the right people and retain the right people. So part of the branding is about attracting people in addition to attracting customers. So for instance, the McKinseys of this world, yeah, their brand is about drawing people, customers that want to work with them, businesses that want to work with them, but it's also about attracting the right caliber of people to want to come and join the organization to deliver that service. In other cases, it might be that it's around work-life balance, a supportive working environment so that, again, morale is improved, and therefore that's a reason to keep your employees within the business. So those are some operational objectives, not all of them, but a few. And in some cases, it's about the brand. It's about making sure that people understand what the brand stands for, and that it's attracting the right sorts of customers to the products and services. So if you are perhaps looking to be in the I don't know, the exclusive, upper market, then you need to make sure that all of the elements around your brand actually reflect that. and therefore mean that people experience what they are expecting. And the same goes whatever level you want to pitch at, people need to actually experience what they are expecting. Okay. Is there anything you would like to add in terms of ex a long-term goal that perhaps you are thinking of or working towards?
Yeah, so well, I mean, I have a vision where we can work with academic institution around the sustainability goal. And what I mean by that is that we have a lot of natural resources that I would like us to use for packaging, as an example. I have a lot of ingredients that I would like us to use as part of scrubs. So so these are some of my long-term
Yeah,
goals that I really would like to work with institutions to do it.
fantastic. Yeah. And you can see how that would then support the brand because the brand is about sustainability and investing in, the environment and the people. So yeah, fantastic.
Like I said, I just need the people with the as a brand, we just need the people with the finances, and we know that people have these finances.
Indeed, indeed. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start talking now about how we create that plan, the business plan that's needed to achieve those long-term goals. Um, yeah, again, this is a bit like sucking eggs, but once we've got our long-term mission and we've put that into goals, it's about prioritizing next. Where should we spend our energy initially? Because, coming up with the goals and where we want to be can create a whole avalanche of lots of things that we want to do and would obviously like to do them all now. But reality, and you've talked about finances a couple of times, reality, finances, time usually dictate that we need to take it step by step. So, what makes sense to start with initially, and what do we sort of defer until perhaps resources allow a bit more? So we build on getting to where we want to get to. So we prioritize where we want to go, and then we just check that what we want to do makes sense in the market that we want to do it in. So, going to the market, collecting data about what it is the market is looking for, what it is they actually spend money on. Because I think one thing that uh, is difficult when we're doing market research is that people want to please. So you ask them, will you buy this? They'll say yes. um, but when you then put it in front of them, they perhaps don't buy it. So really understanding what they've bought in the past, what would actually move them from, doing what they've always done to doing something different is very, very important. And trying to find different ways to understand that is fundamental. Otherwise, we might invest in something that, that there is little return on because we're a bit too blasé around how we asked those questions. When we do have that information, then we can start to say, okay, I know this is where I want to be in 5 years' time, and this is what it means things will look like in 3 years' time. And if I want 3 years' time to look like that, then 1 year's time will look like this, 6 months' time will look like that. And over the next 2 or 3 months, this is where I need to focus. So it's It's actually, breaking things down into something that's manageable. So we have interim goals that allow us to see how we will get to that long-term goal in manageable steps and in a way that we can continue to know that we are making progress. And that knowing that we're making progress is where key performance indicators come in. And I will talk about those a little bit more, a couple of slides down. Um, once we've pulled together what our measures are around making sure that we are tracking towards our goals, we can then talk about how the goals will be achieved. Is it that I am employing somebody to do this, rebranding? Is it that I'm employing somebody to, make the product for me? Is it that I am going to be at X number of pop-ups every month? What is it that we're going to do? And what's going to be different? Because given that we want the future to be different, we must be clear that something we do today is going to be different to what we did tomorrow. Otherwise, the future can't be different. It will be the same as it was. So we have to be clear about that. And we need to be clear about who is doing what. Okay. And then obviously, execution. Um, because lots of people can talk about where they'd like to be. Not everybody can do what it is they say they're going to do. So that's absolutely key. And that, again, goes back to how do we measure what we're doing to reassure ourselves that we're getting to where we're getting. But before I talk about measurements, I'll just touch on a few tools that people use in planning. And I know you know about these because you mentioned one of the ones that I'll come on to in a minute. But the first one here is around, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And this is really fundamental to understanding how we set our priorities. Because, like you just described, the world we live in today is post-Trump is very different to how things looked just last year. So, lots of organizations are seeing threats in terms of what Trump is doing. But actually, on the flip side, there's lots of opportunities for organizations, even in that situation. So it's really a matter of understanding what that landscape looks like and how we can turn it into something that we can leverage. But we don't know that until we've actually assessed and understood the landscape properly. And then we can say, okay, well, given this is what it is, this is what we can do with it. So it becomes an opportunity. Or this threat is something that we want to avoid, and therefore we will, perhaps not operate in this sector or not operate in that market, but we find ways to make sure that we remain safe and viable. And understanding those then shows us, okay, what resources have we got to allow us to achieve what we do? And that's where our strengths or our weaknesses lie. Strengths might be, I know lots of people in Nigeria and Ghana where I can get my shea butter from. That's a great strength. A weakness might be, okay, I know them, but I can't afford to buy it from them yet. So, what am I going to do about that? But again, knowing what those things are means we can then have a plan as to how we're going to do those things. So that's one of the sort of very simple tools that tend to be used in thinking about the plan. Another one, and this is
Don't put us five horses.
yes, exactly. It sounds like you've seen this as well.
It
Great.
was part of my executive leadership and management course.
Excellent.
Uh,
There you go. Yes.
yes, I guess that's the value I also add to this business head, you know. Anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a strength. The fact that you've got this understanding, this knowledge is a big strength. Yeah. Uh, I'll talk about it really briefly, more for the video than for you.
Yes, that's fine. No, no, please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
So this is really about again, understanding the environment that you're wanting to compete in. So it might be that because of the environment you've got, there's the threat that lots of people want to go into the market. So for instance, AI is the buzz right now, and everybody is purporting to be an AI expert, and therefore, even if you really are an expert, the market is confused by the number of people that are making a lot of noise about it, and therefore not necessarily allowing one to differentiate between who the real experts are and who might just be jumping on the bandwagon. So that means that you have to be very, very careful about um, how you will respond in a market where there's the opportunity for lots of uh, organizations, even individuals perhaps, to enter that market. Um, in other markets, or it may possibly even the same markets, it might be that the supplier power is very high, so that the people you need to buy your goods and services from, um, they have a monopoly on the market. You can't go anywhere else. Hence, when the Ukraine war started, all of our energy prices went up, and nobody had any alternative. You couldn't go to a different supplier because it was a monopoly. The supplier power very, very high. So if you perhaps are running a factory that needs a lot of energy, you are stuck. Perhaps one of the things you need to then think about is, okay, if supplier energy is a big aspect of my business. I know that the supply power for energy is very high. What can I do? Do I look to, put solar panels on my factory? So you think about what your options might be, so that you have a bit more control about what happens with your energy usage. Threat of substitution. Uh, that happens in so many markets. I'm just trying to think about one now. People want to travel to Calais. They could fly, they could go by ferry, they could go by the train. So if me as a Eurotunnel, if I put my prices up stupidly, people will just run off to the ferry, or they'll decide to fly. So there's that means I don't have as much leverage. So again, I just need to be very clear about how I manage that. And what some uh, organizations do is actually buy out that threat of substitution. So you find an organization that started out in, just buses, and now they run trains, they run, because they want a monopoly on all of those options. Um, Buyer power. Uh, this is where the buyer holds all the power, because they have probably a lot of options to them in terms of that threat of substitution, and therefore they can chop and change. There's very little that keeps them locked onto you. I'd say that share class is in a market where there's a lot of buyer power, because people believe, it might not be true, but they certainly believe that they have lots of options. They can go into Boots, and they'll be confronted with a whole array of things that purport to do the same sorts of things. Even being in Boots, you get confused. So therefore they can pick and choose and decide, I want the cheap one this month, and next month they just had their bonus, they want so it's up to them. And again, that, depending on where you are, you need to then decide, okay, will I build more around my brand so that people decide that actually they don't want to let go of me now that they've started using me. Um, it's things like that that one needs to be very clear about, where the buyer has the power. You need to find hooks to keep those buyers locked in with you. And then there's the fact that there's lots of other players in the market, and therefore, obviously, everyone wants to come out on top. Everyone's trying to attract the same buyers, and therefore thinking about how those competitors might react to what you do is also very important. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can I take a 2 minute break? And I'll be right back. Back now. Sorry about that.
You're
Hi.
back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
also like to move around because sitting in one place is not good for your health.
It is definitely not good for anybody's health. So, yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Where was I?
Yeah, balance score. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Uh,
Pestles.
yes, pesto. I'm sure you've seen this as well. And I think this I tend to think about this uh in relation to risk management. Um, is probably where I put it. When I'm thinking about, okay, now I know where I'm going, what are the things that could gets in my way, then I start thinking, okay, let's run round the pestle circle and see what's going on there. Obviously, the economic situation means people feel like they can splash out or not, depending on the situation, and therefore behaviors change. So that has a direct effect usually on especially new customers coming along. You might retain the existing ones, but new ones, it might be harder to get their attention. On the social side, what's going on, what are people thinking, what are people's biases or focus, just thinking about share class in particular right now, people are much more aware of the fact that they need to be conscious about where their product is coming from, how it's sourced. They want to be as sustainability friendly as possible. So those sorts of things are fantastic, obviously, for a share class. And therefore there's a win there. But there may be other things that are going on again on the social front that become threats. So understanding, what's going on in terms of how people are thinking is certainly important. On the technology front, some manufacturing approaches are more technology innovative than others. And, but they might have their pros and cons. It might be innovative, but not necessarily as sustainable. Or, you can't use the sorts of more biodegradable type, products that you want to use in those technologically advanced environments. So, it's pros and cons, and it's really trying to work out what makes sense for your organization. Legal and regulation, obviously, I guess we shouldn't need legal to tell us, but you don't want to create something that ends up damaging people's skin. So and therefore there's regulations around what's allowed, and therefore conforming to that is a non-brainer. But sometimes these things change, and they can change in ways that we don't expect. And it's being aware of how things are changing and therefore being ready to move with that. There was a point that people, the soft drinks manufacturers, had to reduce the sugar in their products. Of course, they had lobbied against it for a while, but at least they were aware that that regulation was coming and they could start to plan. But if you were sort of blocking your ears to the fact that this was coming, then all of a sudden you've got a tax on your product and nobody's buying it anymore. So yeah, so and some organizations waited, and didn't do anything, and it was after the regulation came in that they changed their formulation, and others were in advance of it. So you watch and you decide where you want to be. The environment, we've talked about that a fair bit. Some organizations don't bother, they don't care, and they don't talk about it, and they serve a market that perhaps doesn't care and doesn't talk about it. However, sometimes whether you talk about it, whether you care or not, it comes in and smacks you in the face. So, perhaps if we're manufacturing in a place where there's a possibility of flooding because of the changes in the environment, that's certainly something to be very much aware of and conscious of, and plan around how we mitigate the risks around that. And then political, like you mentioned earlier on, UK after the Labour government came in is very different to how it was before. The US after the Trump government came in is very different to how it was before. And it means that, people's behaviors change and what we're able to do changes. So understanding all of that is very important. Um, I'll 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 be quite quick with this one. The balanced scorecard. This is really a way of just looking at how we then consider the different things we want to change and make sure that we are balancing things and not being too heavy on one. Is one thing saying, okay, we want to make as much money, so if we just focus on financial, we want to make money, we we have to be very clear what things will change in the rest of the organization to allow us to make money. So just thinking about it from one side is never going to work. If I might decide, okay, I want to make money and I increase the price. But if I don't change the branding and I don't change, the messaging or the service, then people will just walk away from my higher price. So if I'm going to change the price, I need to support that increased price with the increased service, the increased, brand attractiveness and all of that. And that might mean that I need to change the sorts of people that I employ to make the product, or the sorts of people that I employ to be on the end of a phone to the customer. So all of these things are very interrelated. And this is really just about making sure that, yeah, you've picked your strategy. Are you now making sure that all parts of the organization are driving towards the same thing and there's nothing that's letting the side down, as it were? Is there anything you'd like to say about that before I move on?
So in terms of the balance scorecard, like I said, the privilege of doing the executive masters really, I never knew about it until we did that. And it's very true that you have to balance all of the different factors, the financial, uh the value chain. I'm not using the words they're using, but the value chain, the customer expectation. It's about balancing everything together. One of the products that we're hopeful of bringing out, because the market is there showing us that there's a challenge around hyperpigmentation, but the things that the ingredients that we've had to bring together, they're not cheap ingredients, but it's about the value that hyperpigmentation bring to people who are even very confident. And like I like to tell people, hyperpigmentation is a natural body defense mechanism. But to the average person, they don't see it like that. So what we can do exists and we can share that with people. So it's about bringing those kind of
Exactly.
visibility to to a brand like ours. Anyway, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you say, so you know that you can bring that value, but you also know that the ingredients that are going into it are expensive. So therefore, if you need to make sure that the customer understands the value that they are getting, so they are willing to pay the price that they're going to have to pay to avail themselves of that product. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start talking about key performance
APIs.
indicators. Yes. Because I think this is something that a lot of organizations, especially no, not a lot of organizations, a lot of small businesses sort of leave to luck, basically. Uh, KPIs are really just, it stands for key performance indicators, and they are aspects of the operations or performance that can be measured that help us to track whether or not we are performing against our goals. So it provides an insight into whether we've made some progress or we are falling behind. It helps us to understand where then we might need to improve things. And it just means that we've got clear evidence backing our decisions. Okay. Um, so to create KPIs or performance indicators, again, it's all linked up to what are our goals, where are we going? And that's where we start. We start with what are the business goals? What are we looking to achieve? And once we're able to actually define those, you know, usually, you use SMART goals, they're specific, they're measurable, achievable. We have where we want to get to. So that's our destination, that's our goal. We can pick performance indicators that allow us to see whether or not we are going there. A very simple one would be around our financial goals. If one of our financial goals is to achieve turnover of 2 million in 5 years' time, then we can say, well, okay, well, that means we would like to have achieved, 1 million in 4 years' time, 500 in 3 years' time, 250 in 2 years' time, and that it's clear, black and white. If in 6 months' time we haven't achieved the 100 that we said we're going to achieve, we know that we need to change something so that we can make up for that difference and continue on our track to where we want to achieve. So but it's not just financial. That's the thing. It's about all of the aspects of that balanced scorecard that we talked about. It's about the customer. Where do we want to be in terms of customer? Maybe it's the numbers of customers. Maybe it's the numbers of reviews that we want. 5-star reviews that we want from them. Maybe it's the numbers of references we want. Maybe it's the numbers of customers that we want to have retained for more than 2 years. So there's lots of different metrics that we can measure to allow us to know that we are achieving our goals. So once we've defined what that goal is, we then start tracking that we are achieving it. Okay. I know I've talked about numbers a lot because I started with financial KPIs, but sometimes there might be more qualitative trackers. So satisfaction. I'm sure when you buy things online, even Amazon, they will say, how was it? How was it for you? Almost everybody you buy from now wants to know what the experience was like for you because they want to understand how they can keep you engaged. So they want to know if it was good and they want to understand if it wasn't good, what that was so that they can deal with it. So there's some non-quantitative measures that you might want to track as well. And then there's the other way of thinking about it. They call it leading and lagging indicators. Financial, for instance, is always looking at the past, because you might predict where you'd like to be in the future, but in terms of what you can actually measure, it's in the past. Whereas maybe something like customer satisfaction will tell you that this one will stay with me because they gave me 5 stars. And but if all the stars are looking at 2s and 3s, then you know that there's in the future something that's some people are likely to leave. So you need to do something about that. One of the things that some organizations can do is worry too much about what are termed to be vanity metrics, so how many followers do I have on LinkedIn, and things like that. And sometimes they are useful leading indicators. So maybe the number of followers might translate into the number of customers, but you need to have a way of assessing whether that's real before you start to use that as something that you're tracking. And sometimes there's just no link between them, and therefore that just doesn't matter. And I guess the other thing to say about performance indicators is that, simple is good because, if we have too many of them, then we're spending all our time measuring and not, running the business. That obviously is to our disadvantage. So a pragmatic set of performance indicators is what we want to aim for. In terms of being able to track them, honestly, it's about just having something that is easy to use. Sometimes there's various dashboards and software, but Excel in the early stages is a very, very good place to start. And some things you want to measure weekly, some things monthly is good enough. Other things quarterly or even yearly is good enough. So being very pragmatic about what it is that you're going to measure and how frequently you want to measure it is fundamental, as is actually collecting the data in the first place. We can't measure customer satisfaction if we don't ask our customers how we did. We can't measure our financial performance if we are not keeping track of our financial performance. So we need to collect the information in order to track it. And then it just needs to be regular. Regular in the sense that we sit down and look at it and decide what we are going to do as a result of understanding what it's saying. Because that's another thing, we can collect it and never look at it, in which case, what's the point? Because it might be telling us we should be making a U-turn, but because we never looked at it, we have never made that change. Yeah. Okay. I think this is repeating myself, so I won't bother with the slide. The next area that I wanted to touch on in the time we have is business plan. How to create it, what should go in it. And I'd really like that to be more of a conversation, as opposed to me just saying what should be in it. So what I'll do actually is I'll get rid of the slides. Oops. Just noticed there was someone out there waiting to come
I
in.
guess you can leave it because when people people are looking at it, the recording is good for them to have it. You don't need to speak about it, but they can have it as something to start off with.
Absolutely, you're quite right. Yeah, okay, fine. I will leave it on the screen so we can talk through it. Adele, welcome. Wycliffe, hello, welcome. Not sure if you can hear me yet, but we are halfway through the boot camp, which is on business planning, strategy and business planning. So welcome. Okay, so this section is really talking about how we can develop a business plan, what needs to go into it, and perhaps just talk through areas that might be a bit of a struggle in terms of building it. And after the session, I'll share a template which really just has the headings, but it will be a useful tool to sort of slot information into. What I always suggest to anyone that I'm working with in terms of them developing a business plan is that the executive summary should be written last. Hi, Wycliffe. Oh, good to see you. Hi. So I suggest that should be written last, just because what we wanted to do is to pull on the story of the rest of the document. So trying to start there might just make it harder work than it needs to be. But around the business description, what we're looking to include in there is what we talked about earlier, the vision of the business, the mission of the business, where this business is going, why it exists, who it serves, what it does. So what are the products or the services that are provided? Who are the customers that you work with? And be really, really clear about, who these customers are, a little bit about the demographics, where they're based, their buying power, that sort of thing. Why it is that they would want to actually buy from you as opposed to wherever it is they were buying from before. And in fact, even if they were not buying anything before, the question is, why would they buy something now? So being very clear about, why this is needed should be in that business description. And then the next section is around the market. What does this market look like? How big is it? Who else is playing in this market? Where the market is going in terms of, potential changes. So for instance, the steel industry or the renewables industry, they all have, we can see that there's paths where these industries are going. And I guess if you think about, for share class, if you think about the skincare sector, there'll be, a route in terms of where things are going. Perhaps people are more about, more gentle ingredients, more natural ingredients, and knowledge about where it's coming from. That might be where the market's going, but you need to be able to tell people that story, that's where that market is going. And you have to be very, very, very clear about your target market. I think you're a good example, and I know I'm picking on you a bit, but you're a good example. Skincare, all of us have skin. So it's very easy to say, oh, well, I'll be, my product will be attractive to everybody. But that is not necessarily true. The reality is that everybody is already doing something with their skin. Whether it's that they just don't bother with anything at all, or they are happy to put Vaseline on, or they, whatever it is, they are already doing something. And part of your goal is to help them change. So you need to understand which sector of the market is going to be in the space to want to change to what you are offering. Is it for younger people because they are still trying and testing lots of different things and trying to find out what suits them? Is it for mothers because they are very anxious about their babies and they want to, protect the baby and give them the most natural thing? So you have to define that market very, very clearly, because that's what sets you up for understanding how much you might be able to sell, because when you define it, you know how big it is, and then you can understand, the potential of you selling. If your market, when you define it, is extremely small, very focused, which is not a bad thing, it means that addressing them might be simpler because you know where to find them. They recognize themselves very, very quickly because they are very unique and small markets. And therefore, they probably have communities or that where you can find them, and that's it. Whereas if it's a very, very broad average market, then it's very hard to create any messaging or branding that speaks to the average, because people just think, oh, they're talking about those people, not me. But having that clarity will allow you to understand where the market is. And that's how you will then go on to defining what your market strategy is. your market strategy is really about how are you going to get the attention of these people. Um, who knows? It might be about putting billboards up over the A40. Now, talking to you, Molly, about your product, I don't think that makes sense, but it makes sense to different businesses to put that billboard up there, and anybody that drives by sees it. So understanding where the market is, what they read, where they go, all of those things allow you to then define how you will reach them. It might be that it is, very much digital. You are emailing them, you are in the community, the communities that they are on WhatsApp and Facebook and whatever those things are, and you are engaging with them where they are going to be. Now, knowing what that is starts to paint a picture about the effort that you will expend to actually get the attention of your customers. So it's starting to speak to one of the costs of your organization. And I see so many business plans where the founder says, we will have, X thousand customers in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. There's very little information about how they will get those customers, and even less information about what it's going to cost them to get those customers. Saying to me, we will be on social media, is not a marketing strategy. That is just a tool that we plan to use. Um, Saying that we will use influencer marketing, and that influencer marketing is going to cost us this. However, it will bring us these number of customers, and we expect that to take us X number of months. Now you're starting to describe your marketing strategy to me. And that tells you it's going to take me at least 6 months. It's going to cost me, at least the cost of the influencer. So and then we start to understand what the real cost of running this business is, as opposed to our hoped cost of running this business. Um, so the same applies in terms of the operational strategy. If you are expecting to sell, I don't know, 5,000 units per month by year 4, what does that mean in terms of the number of suppliers you're working with, for the containers, for the raw products, what does that mean in terms of the logistics of getting the products from the manufacturers to the customers? What does that mean in terms of, the help help people, the people that deal with the customer inquiries, people that want to return stuff, actually defining all of that, and you perhaps want to have headings around manufacturing, suppliers, people and management, equipment, logistics, at a minimum, where you describe in detail how this business is going to run, where you'd like it to be, and what you're going to do in the interim to get you to where you'd like it to be. And again, that then speaks to, oh, it's going to cost me money if I'm going to have this equipment in the business. It'll cost me money if I have to get those containers from China to Nigeria and get the raw material from Ghana to UK. Whatever it is, you need to understand what those are, and all of those are feeding into your cost of production. Okay. And then as a result of that, then you can start to say, okay, so what's our financial plan? We now have a lot more information about what it's going to cost us to run this business. And if you have defined in as part of your vision and as part of your marketing strategy where you want to be in the market, and what that means in terms of your pricing options, you then have a good idea as to whether or not everything stacks up. Because if you are perhaps uh, having a cost base that can't deliver a profit margin with the sort of pricing you think you can achieve with the target market you've got, then you perhaps need to, just review things again. Um, is it the cost base that's going to change? Is it the target market that needs to change? Because there's some target markets where, if you price yourself out of it, then, forget it. So, it's all interlinked. And it's not necessarily as simple as throwing down a few statements and saying, "Here you go, here's my business plan, and now give me some money." um, it really is about painting a picture of how this will be a realistic, achievable business. That's the picture that we're going to paint when we're writing a business plan. I think that's all I want to cover on that area. Only to also say that as part of the finance thinking on the business plan, it is absolutely fundamental to have a cash flow projection that is as realistic as possible. I know it's guessing into the future to some extent, but the main thing about a cash flow projection is it's different to a profit and loss, in that a profit and loss is quite static. And it's looking at the way things pan out at a point in time. Cash flow projections are looking at when the cash has to leave your business and when cash comes into your business. You might look like you're going to be profitable, but because you have to pay out a lot in advance before anybody buys products from you, there could be a big gap that needs to be funded in one shape or another. And without knowing that, you could get yourself into trouble. And that's where a cash flow projection gives you the visibility of when you will run out of money, and therefore allows you to plan ahead to ensure that that doesn't happen. Okay. I think that is everything I wanted to cover on the business plan. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I mean, it's a very good uh, recall to anybody who's watching later about the essence and why the executive summary is at the end. Even though it's at the beginning of the document, it's important to go through all that before you do the executive summary. And I guess in terms of cash flow, as you rightly said, especially if you're a product business, a lot of money goes in the front end
Yeah,
before you actually are able to make it. And it's about getting your products in front of the customers to buy it so that money can come back, and looking at some of the strategy in which you can get the money in advance of,
absolutely. Yeah.
of, of delivering on that. So yeah, it's been great. I'm sure Rama told you I'm going to be finishing a little
Yeah.
bit early
Yeah.
today. So that might give White Cliff the opportunity to have a personalized conversation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Wycliffe, anything you'd like to add or ask?
Yeah, I think I've been just listening. It's a learning moment. Yeah, what should I add on? Like you've like touched everything on the business side. Maybe just to add on the marketing and on the sizes of market, because where people don't, there's a point where you're saying people might think they have a big market, but not all people you think it's your market or market. Therefore, just to ensure like you understand your beachhead market, that's something very important. And doing that also understanding, like for me, there's something people don't understand so much is the cost of customer acquisition.
Mm,
Because and most of the time people businesses are failing because most of young businesses they don't know how to calculate the cost of customer acquisition. You might you might think like pricing your product, but you haven't actually calculated how much does it take to actually bring your customer from advertising, from all those things, and how much do you price your product. Therefore, you
exactly.
find most of the time people will price wrongly
Yeah,
because they don't know the cost of customer acquisition. And they find afterwards they're making losses
exactly.
and think they're making revenue.
Mm,
Or that's one of the things. And also number two, um, going to the financial plan. When people are planning, doing the financial plan, people always mix up with two things. There's operation financial plan, and then there's the customer revenue.
mm,
For if you're working with organization where you handle finances for other people, for
mm.
you find that if you have one bank account, you end up
Recipe
putting
for disaster. Yes. Yeah.
money for your customers in, use it, and then when now you need actually to send to your customers, you don't have the funds. For having those things like understanding very early, like structuring your business very well before
Mm,
actually it up. For I've seen people doing that, but yeah, those are things actually I've been learning for people from people I've been actually helping just to structure for them a different way of just running companies and also running startups.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, your point about, you know, pricing without understanding customer acquisition cost, I've seen too many times. And it's very sad because people are too optimistic about what it takes to actually get customers to come on board. And maybe I should use the word scared about pricing appropriately. I think, oh no, the people won't buy it. People won't buy it, for pricing appropriately. And maybe that is also why they don't want to delve into the real customer acquisition cost. It's a way of, I now I'm talking mindset ways, but it all adds up. It's a way of hiding from the fact that this business perhaps hasn't thought everything through properly. So, pretend to yourself that, oh, it will be easy to get the customers because I've got a wonderful product. All my friends and family like it. Therefore, it will be quite easy to get the customers. So I price more based on the visible cost of, oh, these are the inputs, these are the people, and I price on that, forgetting that there's usually quite a very expensive customer acquisition cost that's not been factored in at all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true actually. Yeah, there's also something like maybe like in operation. Um, as a visionary, as a founder of something like where I've seen people, it is unusual type of expansion. For I can guarantee you actually there's an article I was reading, and last year alone, actually in Kenya here, we had four startups which actually closed. They raised more than $400 million, and they went on closing.
Mm,
For And the main reason behind it is unusual type of recruiting. In operation, be very careful how you recruit,
Mm.
because I have seen many companies 24/7 they are recruiting, but the reality is they're not seeing how much
Do the
the
thing.
revenue getting monthly. For you find that you raise the amount of your salaries,
Mm.
they go beyond actually your monthly operation, and you end up actually raising money from January to December to ensure like you pay the salaries. For the reason behind that is because one, it's about we have these meetings people have, they call them strategic meetings when they're doing you find maybe something haven't been done
Mm.
because you have funds, you want that thing to be done. Therefore, you'll have to bring someone to do it. But it's something which can just be done within the team. Of ensuring like you be very careful in terms of the operation strategy you're putting. Do not just expand without knowing like, okay, are we expanding because of our revenue or are we expanding because we raised funds? For those are two different things. Are we expanding because we just have money because we raised $2 million? Or are we expanding because we are raising good revenue from our business? Well, those are the two different things actually people do. They
And
do a
I,
lot of mistakes.
yeah, I agree. And I wonder whether that is something that if you were assessing your performance using key performance indicators on a regular basis, it'd be obvious very quickly, just looking at the financial projections, if nothing else, that, this is unsustainable. And, perhaps those sorts of organizations might have been able to rescue the situation. And that's another key thing. I think some organizations, they just, I've raised money and therefore everything's going to be fine. It's not the end of a story, it's only the beginning. That's when you have to be really, really vigilant about being able to provide that value back to your investors. Um, and I'm not sure everybody gets that. I think they think about it from their own perspective that, okay, I want to achieve this goal and I need money, therefore somebody give me money and then, I'll get on with it. But actually the investor is thinking, okay, I'm putting money in there because I want to provide a return. Either it's to myself because, I'm a business angel and it's, my money, or I'm actually perhaps a VC that has asked for money and made promises about the return I'm going to provide. And therefore, I must have this return back in order to provide return back to the partners that put the money in the first place. But I think we forget about that and we just think about what we need. I need money now, give me money now, and not necessarily understand what comes at the other side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like there's something you brought in the key performance indicators for, and this is something people are failing actually to understand. I don't know if like I usually use something called OKRs, which is objective and key results. For most young companies don't know how to break down in terms of breaking down an objective, a key result, and the KPIs.
Mhm.
For those three things are very important within a company. For you find that whenever these investors are coming to you, they're coming to see your key KPIs in terms of the revenue, in terms of expansion, all those things. But you have those key, you have actually objective.
Mm.
And for me, whenever actually you are rolling up your plan, ensure that one, you put in the right key results, because the key results are the one going to help you to raise the revenue. For example, you might tell me like, I want to raise $1 million. For it's okay to say you want to raise $1 million, an objective, but putting that strategy in terms of the key results, what are you going to do? How are you going actually to raise that money? That's where it becomes difficult. That's why you find most startups are like, okay, fine, we need to bring 1,000 customers.
Yeah.
And you find they get only 10 customers within that period. The reality is The reality is because they never included the key results. The key results are the one which pushes. They're the one actually which pushes to you to put the KPIs, you know. For if I'm saying today I want to have maybe 1,000 customers in terms of maybe I'm having a business, a software company I'm selling. For where will you get these 1,000 customers? If it's from marketing, but how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
For you find people fail very early without having the right key results, which are very important. And also the bigger thing is during every meeting, the strategy of all meetings, they have different type what you need to change. For you find that objectives are always most of the time they change after 3 months, that's quarterly. And then your key results you do like weekly, most of the time to see your KPIs, you work on them weekly, and the key results most of the time, 2 weeks or 1 month. There's a period where you need to go and strategize because sometimes you might be doing something, it's not working. If you have to go back and say, you know what,
You have to
okay,
keep.
I have this objective of 1,000, but I have used this type of key results. I've said, I've built a community.
Mm,
You might say, I want to build a community so that I can get referrals.
yeah,
And then you find that that's one of your key results from referrals. If it's not working, you have to change. You have
exactly.
to
Yeah.
find is what I need to do. For startups are suffering in terms of actually marketing, and if I can guarantee you, the most important person for now in startups is a marketer, is a sales and marketing. Those
Mm.
two departments. They're failing. Why? Because they're still using the same strategy from January to December. For you need to change
Not
that.
observing, exactly. They're not observing the results. They're not
Yeah.
acting on the, yeah, they're just doing the same thing again and again and again. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions or suggestions or observations?
Yeah, maybe my own suggestion just is one of the thing is founders need to the CEOs when they need actually to start working on their product, they need to understand the product, they need to understand the market than just working on raising funds. Because I've seen that actually coming out outside there. For that's a disease coming in within our business and startups. We need actually to debunk back to because you're the one who has a vision, you have everything. For sometimes they need to give their time to ensuring like seeing where is the product, where is the revenue? Because you find sometime we have the CTO, we have the product lead, we have maybe the finance, we have the CTO and then the product managers. But the CEO is 100% just raising funds, but he doesn't know what's happening within the business.
Exactly. What you're doing with the money? Yes, exactly.
So those are things we love to actually to understand. But yeah, it's also the CEO needs actually to be when they need to raise money, they need to raise. And also raising funds is not every month or every day. There's a time you have to say no to some funds. For
Mm.
people don't say no to some funds. And that's why you have like whenever you're building your strategy, build it very early, say, okay, fine. If actually I'm going for the debt funds, if I'm going for angel investors, or if um, I'm going to actually to bootstrap my business, or select what you go for. But if you start mixing the things, because you end up actually yourself like being confused because you don't know where you need to go. For this is something also better when you're putting a business strategy on finance. Please say this is the type of money I want to raise, and this is what I need to do. Because I've seen that it has affected people who are co-founders outside there. Oh,
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes. If you're working with somebody and you're not agreed on the approach, and actually that's something I didn't really um, touch on a lot when I talked about the financial plan. It's one thing understanding what the finance future of the business looks like. It's another thing understanding how then the right tools, the right approach to funding the business going forwards. And that will be influenced by lots of things. It'll be influenced by your approach to risk, your approach to working with other people. It'll be influenced by the type of business it is and the market you're in. People are very much in love with tech, AI-based businesses and are throwing money at it. It's perhaps, unfortunately for you, Molly, mass markets, consumer-based businesses are not as attractive because there's an understanding of how tough those markets are in terms of being able to get a foothold. It requires a lot of effort. And that indeed might inform the way you choose to make your mark in the marketplace. What comes to mind as I'm just speaking now, there's a small African restaurant that I know of. They're very clear that actually, yes, they need funding, but they're going to do it in a way that involves the community, because they realize that just being another restaurant out there that's looking for funding means that they'll be battling against too many people. So they decided to use social media and build a brand, build a presence that was about their personalities and about their struggles and all of that. And that's how they've managed to get crowdfunding in place to help them to grow. So it's really, understanding where you are and standing, well, what's the opportunities and threats are for the sector you're in, and then leveraging that, leaning into that, that makes a difference. Okay, I know that you need to leave now, Molly, and actually given that, sorry, I didn't introduce you to Wycliffe. Wycliffe's one of our advisory board members on Melanin Rich. So Wycliffe is here to support, but perhaps knows much more, or certainly as much as I do, about business planning and strategy. So in case you've got any final questions before you go off for the rest of your day.
Thank you so very much to both of you. I really appreciate the the not little but impactful insight about customer acquisition. Oh, he left.
I think his Wi-Fi must be playing up. I'm sure
Oh, I would really have enjoyed. I think I probably still have like 10 minutes or so. I would have really liked his insight into how you actually quantify customer acquisition in a financial sense.
Okay. I'll do what I can. Customer acquisition is exactly what it says on the tin. It's the cost of acquiring a customer. It is understanding the cost that needs to go into any sort of promotional activity that you need to do, plus then the cost of any customer service support that you need to do in order to retain them. And I think the issue tends to be that the promotional activity is almost always underestimated. People think that, okay, if I put a few posts out there, I've done my job and I'll get the customers I need. But I'm sure you understand now, having done, you post regularly, you attend events, you're doing all of these things. All of these things, when you're attending an event, that is part of your customer acquisition. You're spending money to go out there, you're spending money to be there. If you recruited somebody to stand there at the stall that day, that would be part of your customer acquisition cost. Honestly,
Yeah.
you could be costing yourself, as an employee, you should be adding yourself to that cost. So that's part of your, and that you could do more. To get to where you want to, you could do more. It's the cost of all of that. That is your customer acquisition cost. And I'll be honest, it's hard to predict what it's going to be until you've had, perhaps a couple of years of operations where you've seen what works. Because at the moment, sorry, not at the moment, but in the early days, there's a lot of trial and error. Some things might work, but a lot of things don't work. So you keep pivoting, you keep, assessing, but keeping track of what it is you're spending on marketing and how many customers you gain for that expenditure is
At the moment, I have to say, from a share class perspective, the acquisition cost for a customer is very high.
yeah. And is that factored into your pricing?
Not really, if I'm being honest right now.
If it isn't, then are you making any money?
I like the way you said that with a straight face.
But it's reality, isn't it?
Really?
That's what I meant earlier on when I said we perhaps hide from it because we're
No, it's not that I hide from it actually, because I actually don't say I don't add it to it. I just don't, maybe I don't add it enough. So, for example, my cost as a person is not added to it, but I try to add the website acquisition, the cost of the website, cost of the other people, but my cost is also important.
absolutely, because you could be doing something very different with your time.
Yes. So I mean I guess in the early days, but this early days just taking a bit too long. So I'm thinking what more can be done to make this as profitable as it can be. So well, we'll see. I'm trying my best on setting fronts, trying to see how we can get more leverage.
Mm.
What I mean by leverage is going to places where I can sell more. And if they're asking us to give them a 10,000 unit, then we know we can go to the bank and say, look, we have this request. Can you fund us? And so yes, there are that strategy as well. So but yeah, it was good.
I'm glad you found it helpful.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll send the business plan template, but if you have questions as you start to work through that, then well, we've got I'm not sure we've got anything in the diary for the next.
No, not at the moment. And actually, to be quite honest, not in May because
Well,
in
that's
May,
I'm going on holiday, so
yes, yes. But yes, we'll do maybe we'll do a double session or something like that to catch up, or twice in 1 month or something to catch up on the missed ones. But what I was going to also say to you, I am being serious about the wellness park. That's something that we want to do. So if you do know businesses, uh, I'm going to, that's part of all the other meetings I have today. Um, we are really committed to doing that, and we're doing it with another organization where they do mosaic art, we do wellness, we do art, we do creating the share class product as a workshop,
okay.
going away to the countryside where it's nice and relaxing for them. And we can just like a team building exercise
Yeah,
as well.
okay. Well, yeah, it'll be good, definitely good to talk about it because I can see how that is a unique way of getting attention. Um, I wonder about the volume that comes from that because this is probably what tens of people, not hundreds of people that
Yeah, yes, tens of people, but what that does for us when we pull it off is that they can then recommend that to their team. And that also includes those individuals actually knowing people who, from a share class perspective, knowing people who would benefit from our product. I went to a networking event yesterday. I had the product in my bag. There was a guy, I saw his hand. I said, "You are our customer." So he said he was going to get back to me. He hasn't, so I'm going to follow up with him. So yes, it's a one-on-one, but actually
Yeah.
that's this.
One thing I'd really like you to think about is how many regular customers do you think share class needs to meet the vision you have for this business? I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about, 5, 10 years time. And then just think about the various strategies that could get you to that sort of volume. And maybe it is just a few hundred customers that you need. But then if that's the case, maybe you need to look at the pricing. But so it's an iterative thing. You won't land on the right answer initially. But I think that's quite important because I hear what you're saying about the camp, the way there's the retreats. I really hear it. And I can see how it can be a supporting tool for your promotion, an aspect of your promotion activity. But if it's thousands of customers or tens of thousands of customers that share class needs, it's a very small part. And if it's a very small part, I wonder about, given that it's mainly you in the business, whether the effort is
Consummate to where the strategy is trying to go to. I understand that, but I guess at this initial stage, what we're trying to do is to get expertise monetized
mm,
within the brand structure of wellness, lifestyle, sustainability, and if
yeah.
working with other partners,
Mm,
we'll be able to get something out of it.
yeah. Oh, I definitely get it, and I can see how it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sure when you do your recording,
Some money in, yes.
you will need to cut this out because this is part of
Oh yeah, yeah, no, oh, yes, this is just us talking now, so we can cut the actually I can stop the recording actually.
yes. Yes.
Find the stop sharing and I'll stop the recording.
Yes. So I mean that